Welcome to the TFD Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Sullivan, and this is the show where we break down popular science into easily digestible and actionable information to give you the blueprint to be a high performer in your life. Today, I'll be chatting to TFD Senior Performance Dietitian Jack Doherty, and we are recapping the last three events we have worked on, being UFC 284 in Perth, UFC 286 in London, and UFC 287 in Miami. We cover the unique challenges presented in each fight week and break down the strategies we use with Alex Volkanvoski, Leon Rocky Edwards, and Israel Adesanya during these weeks. I'll leave the rest of the talking to the episode, so let's get to it. All right, I hope we are recording and hope we are live. It's been a little while. We haven't been absent, we've just been busy, but welcome back to the TFD Performance Podcast, joined with our Senior Sergeant, TFD Senior Performance Dietitian, all the way from, where are you in Thailand?
I'm in beautiful Phuket.
Phuket, Thailand. Jack, the combat dietitian, Doherty. Crowd goes wild.
How are we?
Yeah, doing good. Lots to talk about. We're in mid to late April. We haven't done a podcast episode this entire year. We've been a bit slack. Like I said in the intro, we haven't been slack. We've just been really busy. We're going to recap three big events that we were a part of this year. So we had UFC 284 in Perth, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander the Great Volkanovski. Then we flew over to the UK, the motherland, with Leon Rocky Edwards for UFC 286. And then just recently, only last week I got back from UFC 287 for Israel, the last stylebender, Adesanya, fighting his arch nemesis, Alex Pereira. So let's recap and go over lots to go over. Very good learning points. I feel like this will be a really good episode if you're a student or if you're looking to get into this field, which I know now a lot of people are, which is really, really cool to see. But I want to break down for you guys, obviously, what we're doing with the athletes. We'll talk about what we did with Volk and all the other athletes in Perth. We'll talk about how that fight week with Leon was a little different to when he first fought Usman, because it was a bit of a different approach, especially from the nutrition side. And then Israel fighting Pereira again. That was a really cool fight. Very, very clinical. Again, a few different things we did in the fight week leading up to that than what we didn't do in the first one. Lots of cool learning points. First and foremost, Jack, I want to get your viewpoint on UFC Perth, because unlike the other two cards where it was just me going Han Solo flying out there, we had the whole squad together. I think we had like a squad of 8 to 10 people in the TFD team who came out, and we were working with, I don't know, like 8, 9, 10, something athletes, some crazy amount of athletes. We had two chefs who came over with us. We had Chef Mario Limadorian, who's a former two Michelin star chef, who came over. And then we had Paul Epsimos, who runs Athletes Nutrition, who's Alex Volkanvoski's meal prep. He's a trained chef that does all his prep for us during camp. Jack, give us a quick overview of UFC 284 in Perth.
I think it was an amazing experience in comparison to when we did UFC Melbourne. Was that 3 or 4 years ago now?
Yeah, I guess this was the first one we did post-COVID all together, wasn't it?
Yeah. We did Melbourne, then we did the New Zealand card, then we basically went to lockdown for 2 years in Australia. So that was the first one we've had back on home soil. I think it was an amazing experience. Obviously, we had so many guys. We had 8 or 9 UFC guys at the time, but then also we had we're looking after some guys in the Eternal as well. So I think all up we had about 12 to 13 athletes were helping that week. But I think having such a great team now this time around, obviously made it a lot less stressful. We were very organized. We had everything down to the T. Obviously, it's still stressful trying to make sure that we're making sure that 8 or 9 UFC athletes are on point at every point, from the Sunday to the weigh-in day and plus the fight day. But I think we executed quite well this time. The team was amazing. Chef Mario's meals were, couldn't say a bad thing about them. Everyone was raving about them. The athletes were super happy. They were performing well. And then the weight cuts went very well. The refuel, the performances of everyone was fantastic. I think overall that week was it ran pretty smoothly. Obviously, that was the result of us having such an amazing team and everyone working so cohesively together. But yeah, it was awesome to get back to home soil and obviously have that the Australian crowd and the Australian people kind of excited about an event again and us to be there as a team all together again.
Talk us through what it was like managing each of the athletes, because I'll give you guys who are listening the insight. Basically, I ran off with Volk for the entire week. Volk was staying offsite. He wasn't offsite. He just wasn't in the same hotel as the fighters. We had a hotel just across the river. We wanted our own space. Volk, Volk is a huge superstar nowadays, and everywhere he goes, he gets swamped, and that can add an additional layer of stress that we don't need in fight week, or at least for the first half of fight week. So we're in our own hotel, and so I was looking after Volk offsite, and Jack was pretty much manning the crew and sailing the ship back at our base hotel, which was across from the fighter hotel. And Jack, talk to us what it's like managing all the fight week strategies of, say, whatever it was, 7-8 different UFC guys, plus the Eternal guys. You've obviously glycogen depleting, sodium manipulating, water loading, fiber reducing, doing all of those things, plus managing the psychological side of it, right? So you're going to be talking to them every single day when they're freaking out, they're messaging you going, oh my God, where's this? And then you're on the other side as well, the logistics. Hey, I need you to get you meals here. You're doing media. We'll meet you in the middle here to get. Talk us through what it's like, one, planning everyone's strategies out, then making sure the chef and the whole team are on point. And then talk to us about how you interlace that in with the psychological and logistic side of just putting all those numbers into action and then making it actually work.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest point. I think that, obviously as dietitians, we know the science, we know all these protocols and procedures. That's the kind of stuff we have down pat. But I think one of the most important aspects that not many people speak about, and especially don't speak about at university and those kind of things, is communication with the athletes, communication with your team, and communication with the chefs to make sure that it works so cohesively. But what you don't see is that at the start of the week, myself and yourself sat down and we wrote on a whiteboard, all the athletes, all the measurements we have to hit in terms of like their macronutrient targets for the week, and kind of organized it. But what you don't see is the fact that I've got my phone running with, Instagram, WhatsApp, normal messaging, talking to different people at different points, and obviously different team members of every one of these teams. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out exactly what time they wake up, when they want to be fed, where they're going to be. So in terms of just the logistics of it, it gets easier as the week goes on. But again, like I was getting up at, say, 4 o'clock every morning, making sure that the chefs were all prepped and ready to go, making sure the team was ready to go, and then the communication started. So I'd wait till the guys woke up, ask when they were going to start training or when they wanted to eat, and kind of made sure that I understood the timings. But it's a very exhausting process, because you're basically talking to one athlete 4 to 5 times a day to kind of organize just the drop off. We're also taking note of their weight, how they're feeling, how their mental health is. So we're trying to basically make sure the logistics are there, they're tracking well, but also that they're feeling supported as a third step as well. So it's kind of this whole process of not only managing the food side of things, the logistics that you spoke about, but it's also making sure that they feel like they're getting, like the athletes are getting the most out of us as well, and us supporting them. But on that, I think, as we always speak about, the team effort, Dojo and Lauren were also there helping us. So at any point, incredible work from the guys, incredibly supportive. They're always ready to go. So basically we had the chefs running basically, cooking throughout the day, all day. And then we had Lauren and Dojo basically running the logistics across the road, and me sitting at home base, kind of just making sure that everything was running smoothly each day.
Yeah, it's a big man-powered effort behind it. I think everyone looks at like our social media during that week, and it's kind of like that. We also have like a media team with us. We have like 2 videographers, editors that are just sitting down editing the whole time. And yeah, it looks really cool on social media, and it is cool. It's one of the best jobs in the world, especially as a dietitian. You don't get much cooler, but the logistics behind it is can be absolute mayhem. So let's talk about the weight cut night. So obviously went smoothly. All the chefs are on board. Like we obviously sit down at the start of the week, like you said, make sure everyone's on the same page, and we have all these numbers for these guys. We have a big whiteboard. We have how much macros they're meant to be eating and what that translates in grams. And then we talk to the chefs how to adjust based on their weight each day, and we track. And we're, like Jack said, he's constantly talking to these guys if they're, hungry or feeling too full, and say, hey, eat more of this, eat less of that, drink more of this, blah, blah, blah. Doing all of that. We get to the Thursday night before Friday morning weigh-ins. Most of the athletes, not all of them, but most of the athletes start cutting weight. This was a weird UFC setup in that it was just like a giant communal workout room, at least for like the A and B, so like the red corner, blue corner. And so at least when I came over to see you, I was with Volk, cooked him dinner and came over the weight cuts. I walked into this weight cut room and it was mayhem. There was just like 10 different teams, like probably 70 different bodies in this weight cut room. And this is like a normal room, not huge, not small, but like really shouldn't have been that many people. Talk us through how you organized your way around that. Because again, this is the most dangerous part of the process, right? And it's the UFC. So these guys are going to be cutting more weight than your average fighter. How did you navigate that to make sure everyone was safe in that environment?
Like, as you said, like, it wasn't just the obviously athletes and the teams. And some people were bringing like 5 to 8 to 12 people into the room with them. And then there was also the random people who, I don't know how they got through the security system, would start opening the door and we're like, oh, there's the UFC fighters cutting. So it was actually mayhem. But what we try to do, like, luckily, like, you know, we have such a good relationship with most of the athletes we work with, and we know their team on a very good, good terms, and a lot of them are our friends. So in terms of that, it was just like, again, we had Lauren and Dojo really helping us. So we had everything basically timed out. So on that day, we woke up in the morning, we knew exactly how much they had to manipulate in the next 24 hours. Basically, we timed that with everyone. We gave everyone a specific role. But in terms of that room, we really just took over certain parts of it. So we had Justin Tafa in one area, had Tyson Pedro in one area, we had Loma in one area. So we really locked down certain sections of that room to make sure there was everything was running really smooth. Because as you know, it's an incredibly stressful time. You know, at that point when they're kind of depleted, they're feeling kind of exhausted, you know, they kind of just want to get this process done. It can get, you know, some people can get kind of agitated or kind of very particular about how things run. So it's very important that we kind of lock down a certain space for them and make them feel comfortable and they've got things around them. I think this comes down to, again, knowing your athlete specifically. Like with Justin Tafa, we had his team around, we had specific music playing, and we had a little area locked down. Then you had Loma with the Hickmans. She had her support system. So understanding what they need on an individual basis, from music to like kind of the mood, creating the mood that they want. You know, some people like to speak, some people don't like to speak, and or just creating an environment individual, even in that huge space. So what I try to do with everyone, speaking to the team and understanding what everyone needed and kind of doing that specifically, but in different sections of one basically large room.
Yeah, it's a full-on process, and I guess it went well. Like, it went really well. And from Volk's end, I guess I'll fill people in, because a lot of people, I think, were under the impression Volk just walked in on weight, and that was not the case at all. We obviously did the Volkanovski diet to get him to 155, where we had him on a pretty insane amount of calories. We started at 4,000, went up to 4.5, and at one stage we were eating 5,000 calories a day. So he would maintain his weight. And then for the final 2 weeks, we came down. So in fight weeks, Volk was actually cutting, not as much as he cuts to featherweight, but just as much as everyone else at that UFC card. He was still cutting weight. So we were still running our fight week plan with him, and he was still going through that and cutting weight as he normally does. Mentally, we decided that would be a really advantageous thing to go through the weight cut process. Again, it would also, if we came in heavier and cut weight, he would also put on that weight, which he did, and he'd come into the cage at the weight we wanted him to, which was really, really good. Volk's weight cut was super smooth. Obviously, it's a lot easier when we have the guys like yourself looking after everyone else, and I can just focus 100% of my attention on him. We ended up getting a really good sweat out the night before, and then doing a really quick bath in the morning, and Volk was on weight. And then and Volk's refuel, and rehydration, which has always been an area that we have to be really dialed in, because it cuts a lot of weight. Featherweight, we had a lot more lenience going to lightweight, which was really advantageous for him. So Volk went into that cage in such a good shape from our point of view, which was really, really encouraging. And I guess all of our athletes, right? Like, I thought they all looked really, really good, and it helps having the chef and the team there. It really showed me how far along this field has come since when I started working in this area like 6 years ago, when I first saw the UFC and how it was run before the UFC PI was around and I was around. And, you know, not many people knew what they were doing when it came to cutting weight. It was just like absolute, you know, wild, wild west. And not many people were like really getting this dialed in. All the guys at that UFC Perth looked great. I thought they went in there and they looked phenomenal.
Yeah, I think if you compare it to the UFC Melbourne a few years ago, like the process was just everyone just looked better. The process was easier. I think, you know, just like it's chalk and cheese from like when this kind of when this area began, in Australia a few years ago, and now I think it's just completely different in such a positive way. I think, everyone made the scales quite easily. Everyone looked healthy. And everyone performed well. And I think, in comparison to other times, when people kind of guesstimating and all those kind of things, it's a whole different field, and it's so good to see because everyone's healthier and performing better.
Yeah, so I think that's a pretty good recap on 284. Obviously, Volk didn't get away with the result we wanted. Really good performance from Volk, and we just started camp. Actually, he starts camp next week for his next fight against Yair Rodriguez in Vegas fighting for the undisputed featherweight title. So that'd be a really good one. Interesting point about Volk, which I'll mention because I haven't spoken about it before, is that usually when you do this kind of like the Volkanovski diet that we did with him, and you're obviously putting on a lot of not putting on weight, but maintaining that weight, what can happen after that process is that you can see a bit of a change in body composition. I've seen this with athletes in the past. And then when it comes to starting your next fight camp, when you go back to your regular weight class, it can be quite difficult because the body composition can change and they can put on a little bit more fat, obviously, because they're having so much more calories in that previous fight camp. But with Volk, we did all these scans and we got all this testing done, sent it all back. Volk is, funny enough, I shouldn't be surprised because it's Volk, but surprisingly, if it was anyone else, you'd kind of be a bit, how's this work? But he's sitting in a better position than what he was before, and he was the textbook guy for featherweight. Like, he's the textbook numbers when you look at his body fat, his muscle mass, all the ratios of all of those things. He's the absolute perfect textbook, or what I thought was perfect. And then we got his latest scans and he's even better. So he's obviously come out of that camp and he's just got straight back on. He's got straight back into training and he's in even a better spot. And I feel like that period where we didn't deplete and we didn't have to go into that negative energy balance and really drain his system too much because he was eating so many calories has probably paid off a lot for the long run. So when he's coming back to featherweight, he's obviously always starts camp in a good spot, but now he's starting even better. So very, very excited to see how Volk fares in this next one. Like, Volk's obviously very, very good at featherweight as he was. Very interested to see what he's like now that he's got that little bit of momentum from this last camp. But let's talk about UFC 286 and then UFC 287. So 286, Leon Rocky Edwards, crazy fight. Give us your thought. What did you think of the fight coming from your end, comparing the first fight of Leon to the second fight?
Performance-wise, I think obviously, he gets better with every fight. I think, he always looks fantastic these days. But I think, in comparison, obviously I think with Usman getting knocked out, I think he was a lot more hesitant. But just from a performance standpoint, I think both guys looked fantastic, obviously. I think obviously this second fight was more of a third fight was more of like a mental warfare rather than just because they're obviously both freak athletes. They both, always make weight, always look fantastic. But this was just kind of a battle of wills. And I think, Leon just has that iron mentality these days after, especially after solidifying that last win. So it was an amazing performance. It was great to see. But what was it like for you in this fight week with Leon in comparison to other fight weeks?
A lot more dialed in, and Leon's always very dialed in. Leon, out of all of our athletes, is probably the one that is very pedantic about, like, I need to get this much food in at this time and I need to eat. Whereas everyone else will always still stray to the side of, if I can skip a meal, I can, and I kind of have to force it into him. Be like, you can have it. Where Leon's like, no, I want to do it this right and make sure my body's in the best spot. Obviously, we were dealing with the altitude that first one, and I've said this publicly. I don't think we dealt with it as a team the best leading into Salt Lake City, but whatever, we live and learn. This one, obviously, it's in his hometown. It's in London, just south of his hometown. And obviously, we nailed that fight week. That fight week was probably the most clinically one of the best we've ever done. Leon didn't miss a single meal. Even one area that I thought that we absolutely have to nail for Leon was the fight day refuel. So you can get really in the weeds with this. You've obviously got your fight week period cutting down. You do your weight cut, which is your rapid weight loss phase. Leon's really, really good with that. We do the same process every single time. Then you've got the critical period, which is your rehydration period after you make weight, and then your initial amount of food. And that's your Friday before the fight, the critical rehydration from they weigh in at say 9 a.m. and then from say 9 to midday is a critical period. You've got to rehydrate them. And then you've got from midday that entire night to start the refeed. But when you wake up Saturday, very, very important, because a lot of athletes will just take their foot off the pedal and be like, oh, it's fight day, I've got to get in the fight zone. Leon was an area we really wanted to focus on and make sure you need to be charged up, really have everything possible that you can have in your system, because what we were expecting is an absolute war from Usman. Like, he wanted to win his title back, and we knew we were going to have to go 5 rounds. And we knew that those last 2 rounds are going to be a push. And knowing what Leon's game plan was, is that he was going to be moving, he's going to be active. We needed to make sure that he was fueled up. So that's what we really emphasized. We actually added an extra meal, and you can go on our Instagram and see what the calories and macros were. I put it up because I thought it was very, very interesting how much we actually got in. And that's a credit to Leon, because we practiced that throughout the camp of every hard sparring day, get this high intake in, get this high intake. And it's something we always talk about when we talk about training your gut to get used to it. Because if you do this for other athletes that aren't used to eating that much on fight day, 1, their gut's just not going to handle it, probably going to spew in the cage. And 2, they're just going to feel like crap. They're going to feel like crap having that much food just walking around in their gut. They're not going to feel good warming up and everything. So that was something that was hugely impressive from me. And I think it showed in the fight. I thought Leon, like, he has a great gas tank, but I thought he had a lot of pop in the last rounds. And I sat back with a lot of confidence and said, you know what, we've done everything possible to put his body in the best position possible, so that if it has to go to those deep waters in the later rounds, he's got everything in there.
Yeah, because I think you see a lot, like, obviously we've been on like many, like, especially UFC fight weeks, but just many fight weeks in general. You see a lot of like fight day stuff, as you said, like people get into this fight zone and kind of nutritional intake kind of isn't seen as important, or it's not prioritized by some people because they're kind of getting to that zone. And I think that's something to really take note of, is just like, you know, the importance of intake, especially on fight days, as well as, like, you know, because as you said, when we work with people, everyone really wants their sparring day to go as well as possibly, want to be fueled, to always making sure they've got heaps of intake on that day. But again, a lot of people kind of fall off on that. So it's interesting to see that when you guys nailed it, how his performance was, you know, even more impressive than his last ones.
Yeah, and even the turnaround, I think this is an important note to make as well, is like, your nutrition, especially in those 2 days, will play a large role in how you recover from that fight. Like, obviously, if you're going into a fight, your body's going to get beaten up. It's just, you're going to get a lot of physical damage, but your recovery, your nutrition plays a huge role. We always talk about nutrition in terms of performance. It does absolutely play a role in how your body manages and its energy stores, and how much your output can take, and, you know, can you meet the demands of the work that you're trying to put your body through. What's something we don't talk about, and is so important, especially post-fight, is nailing your nutrition those after that critical period for your recovery. And that's something with Leon I found really, really impressive, is like, the next week when we're chatting, he obviously had some injuries. You were just in a 5-round war for a world championship. You're obviously going to have injuries, but he definitely recovered a lot better. And you see this with a lot of athletes where, you know, it takes a little bit of time. They're like, man, I'm really beat up, and they get like all kind of suppressed and don't have a lot of motivation to do anything. But Leon was pretty good. He was right back in it. You know, Messi's like, oh man, like, what's the next step with the diet? What do we need to get on? What do I need to be eating so I can get back into like full training and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, really, really impressive from all fronts from Leon. And yeah, very much looking forward to the next one, because Leon, like you said, he's always improving. He's improving in every aspect. Thing is, he's got a really good strength coach over there, Coach Johnny, and he is phenomenal. He works with a lot of these UK boxers and a lot of the UK UFC stars over there. That's one area that I've found with Leon. Insane how much muscle mass he's putting on in between these camps, and how much power he's generating in, like, you hear, like, every high level athlete, you see him hit pads, kick pads, and you're like, Jesus Christ, like, how does that go into another human and them not just die? Like, but Leon has really come leaps and bounds. So it's really interesting and really good working alongside Johnny and seeing these gains that he's getting with Leon. And that just helps our process so much more. It helps the weight cut process, helps everything. So I think the best of Leon Edwards is yet to come. And I think he's just coming into this fruitful period. Very, very excited for what's ahead for him.
It's terrifying if you're going to keep getting better.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess let's finish this off with 287 Miami, Israel Adesanya, the rematch. Again, I love talking about Leon, especially Israel, especially after talking about Leon, because the way that those two are, especially during fight week, is very different. I just did an interview about this, and I'll talk about it on our channel publicly. I think something that we don't talk about a lot, and it's very, very in the niches when it comes to cutting weight, and you probably wouldn't think about unless you're at these very, very high levels, is and you've worked with Israel on one of our fight weeks. Israel by nature is what we call a night owl. So which means he stays up all night, sleeps in all day and gets up late. And then that's his routine. Leon is the complete opposite. And I think when we talk about in terms of nutrition, overall calories throughout the day, macros throughout the day, whatever you do in that 24-hour period is what matters. But you need to take into account the person's lifestyle. And a big part of that is their sleep cycle. And so it's always very interesting doing a fight week with Leon against Israel, because Leon, we've kind of on this early schedule, which is, I guess, more of a traditional, me and you probably on this schedule, whereas like Israel's is very unique, like nighttime schedule. So everything's really late. We train really late at night. We don't go to bed till like really late, early morning. So everyone sleeps in, they get up, he's not eating his first meal until like 1 p.m. And then we start the process. But the thing is that Israel does that throughout his fight camp as well. Like he does this. He's obviously got to get to train in the morning at 10 a.m. So he sleeps right in until then, but he still stays up pretty late. And what I've found over the years for Israel is that it works. You can still make it work. You just have to adjust a lot. So a lot of like the traditional things that we would do, say like loading up on a big breakfast and going in, like we just don't have the time to do that with Israel. So we do things like backloading on when he's, if he's up all night and he's not going to sleep anyway, hey, get some good food in and backload. And it's basically like having breakfast, but just before you sleep, essentially. So you're putting everything in and then just have a quick snack on the way out the door. And then after that session, make sure you rehydrate and refuel, and then go home and sleep or whatever. And then wake up for your next one, repeat, get home from training, and then eat a big meal like straight after. So you're refueling, recouping everything, play around, do whatever you do all night, and then eat like your meals in the nighttime. And we seem to do that fight week. It's a very interesting comparing them, because it's like the complete opposite schedules. And I think it used to throw me a bit when I started with them, because it's like, do the principles apply? Like you think of all these like circadian biology principles, and you're like, what I've learned over the years is yes, all the principles do apply, but you just have to make it suit for their lifestyle. And they're so different, chalk and cheese, how these guys go about it.
Is there method to the madness though? Like is a reason why Israel has that kind of schedule to kind of emulate, like, because obviously if you're kind of having that sleep cycle that he'll have, like he'll be the most awake, or you could say that his energy levels will be optimal around the same time as he'd be competing at the UFC, because obviously he's a star, he's a headliner, so he usually competes at like 10:30, 11, maybe 11:30 in the US. So is there kind of method to the madness, you think?
I think there is, to be honest, because Eugene's very smart with it, where they do their fight simulation, or the spider, which I'm sure everyone who's followed CKB have seen. For the UFC guys, they do that Sunday morning. And what's Sunday morning in the US? It's Vegas time. So it's like Vegas nighttime. So Eugene has kind of developed the most important session of the week to be in sync with Vegas time. And like you said, we've spoken about this over the years, is that it's almost like Israel is just, whether he's doing it consciously, subconsciously, who knows? It's Israel. He's a special breed. So he probably is doing it to some level of conscious thought, where he is preparing his body for war, like always thinking of it. I'm going to get up and you know what? This is what I'm going to be doing fight week and the night before my fights. I'm just going to do that all the time. So I'm just always preparing. Like it's like muscle memory, but it's like lifestyle memory almost.
Yeah, I think you spoke about this before on like podcasts and stuff, but I think like, if you can explain like the difference in like mentality, because obviously Israel's so unique. Like I've been in that fight week, and you said that change from Israel to Stylebender. What's it like being around someone who's obviously you've been on so many fight weeks, and someone so unique in terms of their ability to shift their mental, or just that kind of uniqueness that Israel brings to a fight week?
It's cool. It's definitely cool to see, but it's unique. And it presents somewhat unique challenges from the nutritional standpoint, because a big part of what like Israel is like channeling when he gets into it. And I completely understand. I used, not to this level when I was cutting weight, but I enjoyed that like animal instinct, when your calories are low, when you're kind of going through and it like kicks in something primal in your brain. That's absolutely the thing. And lots of fighters talk about that. Israel, that's part of his process. The thing is like, we're obviously cutting weight, but we still need to fuel for this fight. So over the years, it's been very interesting learning with him and learning his methods, and say comparing again to someone like Leon, where we're very scheduled and where he wants to get the maximal. How do we adjust these fight week strategies? So for Israel, we're still tapping in and leveraging this mental shift that he's going through, but we're still achieving all the goals I need him to tick off for cutting weight. So again, like what we'll do is we'll change the timings of his meals so he can have some periods of the day, say when he wakes up, that we're not straight away putting in food, so he can feel a little bit of that and he can get in that animal mode. You know what? I like this feeling of being hungry. And then we can load up on some calories and make sure that we're getting some good fueling before he gets to training. And then again, straight after training, we won't eat straight away because again, he likes that feeling of, you know, if this is a bit of like a struggle for me. I like this. Okay, now we're going to rehydrate a couple hours later, get some good food in, and make sure like at some weird time in the morning, you're going to get your last meal in while everyone else is sleeping. You're still up, you get that last meal, then you get your good, 10, 12 hours sleep that he usually gets during fight week. So it's very interesting, but you see this like process as he's cutting away. It's taken me a few years to kind of get used to it. We've got it down pat now that we're very like comfortable with each other and we can talk more openly about schedule and everything. And yeah, it's very cool to see him go through this mental thing, but it presented early on some unique challenges because it was so different. But yeah, we always make weight. Yeah. Israel always looks good and he always performs well. So it definitely works.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people think, he's a skinny, in quotation marks, middleweight. But when you meet him in real life, he's a massive human being. So like, it's just not like he doesn't, just because he's not like as, bodybuilder-esque as Acosta, you got to still think how much fueling a guy of Israel's size. So as like I said, like a lot of people think he's smaller than what he is, but he's actually a massive guy. And the amount of fuel that he needs and what you have to do on those fight weeks after, especially after weighing, to fuel him ready, to get ready for that fight, the intake that he needs is quite high. So obviously you need to be able to balance those things of, his mentality shift plus being able to fuel at the same time, which I think is something that I've seen you in person do incredibly well, which is like being able to get the calories in, but fit around what they're wanting at the same time. I think that's the unique part of what we do in terms of working with fighters is, again, not just being like, when you see some on the Instagram, get this and get this in. It's you're creating foods and you're creating these caloric amounts that kind of suit that person, their wants and their needs, which I think is so important as well. I think the uniqueness and the individualization that kind of comes with working with athletes over a long period of time is something that's incredibly unique.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of it, right? Like everything we do, right, it's just the same principles that you just rinse and repeat. And all those principles we talk about openly on our social media. So it's not like it's a secret or anything, but the real skill and the hard work is really, like you said, applying it to the athlete. That's a whole different ballgame. And that takes years and years and years of experience working with the exact same athlete to dial it in for that athlete. And that's, I guess, what we're seeing. And we're fortunate because we've worked with the same guys for, some of these guys 5+ years. So we're still dialing it in. And I think that's what's really the game changer, figuring out what their preference is and then kind of meeting in the middle. What's ideal for me? What's ideal for them? How can we make the best of both worlds and make this work?
Yeah, like listening and being available to your athletes is something that I think builds that trust. And like as well, like you can see a mentality shift or a mental health shift during a fight week via a text. You're like, oh, okay, my guy's not feeling the best. I need to do this. Like I think that's what that is such an important part to kind of highlight as well. Is like, it's obviously, as I said, the protocols and procedures we've been doing for so long, but now it's how you apply it in such a unique way that I think is what separates from being good and being excellent at your job.
Yeah. And the skinny Israel thing I will address quickly because I feel like over the years, this narrative has dropped off. I gave Leon's strength coach a lot of credit, Johnny. Israel has a really, really good strength coach, Coach AB. Phenomenal strength coach, very, very knowledgeable, absolute weapon himself. He's just like an absolute ball of muscle. Never met a bloke like him. Ran like a 10.3 100-meter sprint back in the day or something ludicrous. He has done phenomenal work with Israel, like phenomenal work. And Israel a couple years ago was always pretty big, like Jack said, but especially over the last 12, 18 months since him and Coach AB have been working together, it's not made our weight cuts harder, but there's definitely more weight we need to account for. And when we talk about cutting weight per the numbers, Pereira was freakishly off the charts and just has a body that's too big for middleweight. He shouldn't be doing it. He's very, very likely done long-term damage to his body because of him pushing and the way that he also did it. The Brazilian way, really not favorable for long-term health. He is definitely a natural 205er. Israel is by no means on the lower end. He is very much in the very average of what most middleweights cut, if not a little bit high. Like he comes into fight week very, very heavy. And I've spoken about this before. He just has a lot of physiological traits that allow him to cut a lot of weight to get to middleweight. And we've spoken about how top level, elite level sports often filter these traits through, weight cutting being one of the success traits in MMA and leading to these top UFC athletes where they've got very, very high sweat rates, very, very high sodium sweat levels and high amounts of muscle density, which allows them to lose more muscle glycogen and more water, and et cetera, et cetera. Israel has all of that. Plus he's working with AB and doing this insane strength work. He's getting so much bigger. And the thing is like a lot of people, first thing they say when they see him is, holy crap, he's huge. And now he's not just like big, like he used to be big, tall and long. Now he's big, tall, long and buff. And he's super strong. And it's, again, Israel's just getting better and he's getting better and he's getting stronger. And it's scary. Like it's scary. Like he's getting so much better, and Coach AB deserves a lot of credit for that. Very, very excited for what's to come for Israel. It's an interesting division because it's like, well, what does he do now? He's cleaned out the whole top 5,
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, I think that's a pretty good recap over it. We're going to get more regular with the podcast. Sorry about this, guys. We've had a lot going on since the end of last year, start of this year. Very exciting things that I can't wait to talk to you about on other episodes of the podcast. But if you guys want to reach out, you got any questions, you guys know where to hit us on our Instagram. We'll be bringing back our weekly Q&As. Jump on there. We love getting on there and doing questions. You got any specific questions for myself, Jack, or anyone else on the team, always feel free to DM us. We've got lots of good resources now on our TFD Performance Hub, which you can get to, link in my bio. We've got some really good guides, combat sports guide. We've got a fight week guide that will be dropping the next week or two. We've got a weight cutting guide, a heat acclimation guide that we're dropping. We just dropped in combination with MA1 Combat, our heat acclimation sauna blanket. So you would see in all of our social media we use when we're cutting weight with, all these guys, Israel, Leon, Volk, all of these top level guys. We use a sauna blanket. We've just made our own that we spent a lot of time making with MA1. That's available now. You can get that link in our bio. Other than that, I think that's everything to catch you guys up on. And Jack Doherty, thanks for coming back on. I'll let you get back to your Sahi bowls or whatever you guys do when you're in
Acai bowls and Muay Thai. That's what I do here.
Yeah. All right, but I'll chat to you soon.
Gotcha.
And there it is, another episode of the TFD Performance Podcast. If you enjoy our content, then follow the link in our Instagram bio to find plenty of educational material, including meal plan guides, weight cutting advice, educational courses, and cookbooks, all for a great price. If you enjoyed this episode, then be sure to leave us a 5-star review and share it with your friends and family. This podcast will be available through the podcast app, iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. And don't forget to follow along our socials at @the_fight dietitian to see all of the best bits from our podcast episodes. Thanks for listening in, and I'll see you guys for the next episode of the TFD Performance Podcast.